Afternoon, Judge Phineas Mojapleo has restricted the use of the old apartheid flag. He says its gratuitous display constitutes hate speech. Judge Mojapleo says, however, he's not banning the flag, saying it can be displayed in the public interest. Let's start this bulletin with ENCA's Janke Tolme, who was in court this morning. Janke, good afternoon. So the judge saying the flag constitutes hate speech. How did this play out a little earlier today?
Yes, Jeremy, that's correct. The judge saying today that this is not a total ban on the old South African flag, but the gratuitous display of it does constitute hate speech, racial discrimination, as well as harassment. The fact that it's not a total ban means that it can be used if it is in the public's interest. This means for journalistic purposes, academic, as well as artistic purposes. Now, in his judgment, he basically relied on two main points, and that's the first one, that it is, in fact, hate speech, the fact that hate speech can be linked to flags as well as symbols, not just words, because that was one of the arguments brought forward by AfriForum. The judge today saying that the legislation has a much broader meaning, and you can't just take the words literally in the legislation, and that's why he believes the flag does constitute hate speech. And then secondly, a lot of emphasis on the fact that the United Nations declared apartheid a crime against humanity, and that is what the flag represents for most people in South Africa, a meaning of hatred, a meaning of discrimination and inhumanity that people link to the old South African flag.
All right, I think we've got a bit of video explaining just that, Janke. We'll get back to you in just a moment, but let's hear then what the judge had to say.
Any display of the old flag constitutes A, hate speech in terms of Section 10(1) of the Equality Act, B, unfair discrimination on the basis of race in terms of Section 7 of the Equality Act, C, harassment in terms of Section 11 of the Equality Act. There is no order as to costs. I hand down the judgment.
All right, Janke Tolme, I want to rewind now, if we can, and you'll set up this next piece of video for us. The Nelson Mandela Foundation, front and center in this case. Why was it taken to court in the first place?
Well, Jeremy, it links back to 2017 when we saw those protests against farm murders on a Monday that was dubbed Black Monday. And that's where there were reports surfacing of people displaying the old South African flag. And it was then that the Nelson Mandela Foundation felt that it's gone on too long and this needs to be dealt with in the Equality Court because it is still something that is traumatizing and dehumanizing and hateful towards a certain group in South Africa, and that needed to be recognized, and that's why they decided to bring it to the Equality Court. But the judge did explain some of this in his judgment earlier.
The Mandela Foundation, in addition to a declaration of hate speech, also seeks an order that the gratuitous display of the old flag constitutes harassment in terms of Section 11 of the Equality Act against black people. The Mandela Foundation testified that any gratuitous display of the old flag, quote, seriously demeans, humiliates, and creates a hostile and intimidating environment for victims of apartheid and its legacy, particularly black people, close quote.
All right, Janke, we're going to get to response in just a moment, but very quickly, did the judge reference what would happen to any transgressor should the flag be used gratuitously?
That's one of the things that was highlighted in court during arguments and by the Nelson Mandela Foundation outside court here earlier, saying they don't want anyone to, for example, be arrested because of this. But there has to be some sort of deterrence. So they are looking maybe at some sort of community service or even a fine that could be paid if you do go against this order handed down by the court today.
All right, let's go to the Nelson Mandela Foundation first. There was reaction outside the court. Set this up for us. What did they say?
Well, Jeremy, from their side, they're saying this is not necessarily a massive victory for them, because you do have to understand that the reasons why some people still choose to display this flag, it's the underlying reasons that we still need to address. Nonetheless, they did welcome the judgment, saying that this is a step forward towards building a united South Africa. Let's just take a listen.
To join hands with AfriForum, with FAK, and the other parties which were Pride, to say our woundedness should then not wound the future. We should not be poisoning the future through gratuitous display of the old flag. But most importantly, is also what the judge said, that unlike what the scare tactics that were played before the judgment, that this was the burning order of the old flag. He was very clear that this is not burning the old order, but the old flag. But it's ensuring that we build that nation that we imagine of, and part of that reimagination is ensuring that we do not then gratuitously display the flag.
All right, that's the view of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. In that same media huddle, Janke Tolme, AfriForum was also there. What did that organization have to say?
Well, they said that they still need to study the judgment in full, but what I did press them on is whether they agree with this judgment or not. And they're saying at the moment they do not agree with it because they still feel that even though something might be offensive, like the displaying of the old South African flag, they do not believe that it constitutes hate speech. They still say that it does fall under freedom of expression. So despite what happened today, AfriForum still standing strong, saying they're not encouraging the use of the old South African flag. They do not do so themselves, but it does go against freedom of expression, according to AfriForum.
Our concern is that dealing with social issues like this by banning certain things, at least to a certain extent, or preventing people by law from expressing themselves in a certain way, does not change their opinions. And the problem that we believe the Nelson Mandela Foundation is trying to resolve has not been resolved by simply preventing people from expressing their views if they still hold certain views.